Hello everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon from everywhere you are. My name is Mohsen from Microsoft Zero to Hero. Today we have another great session and I think that the topic is very interesting. And before to invite the speaker to this stage, let me share some information about the today's session and our community. Today we have Edward here. He's a Microsoft Fabric expert, and he's going to talk about semantic model with the Fabric notebook. And the topic is very interesting for all of the people who work with the data or like that. And as you know, we are part of Microsoft Learn community. Microsoft Learn community is a set of learning content, collection of a lot of learning content with the text, with the video, and you can join the Microsoft Learn community based off your role, based off the certification, select your learning path. And if you have any question, you can ask a lot of Learn experts in the Microsoft Learn community. And also at the based off our rule, our code of conduct is be aware of other, be friendly and passionate, be welcoming, respectful in the chat, in our question, in the comment. Now it's a time to invite Edward to the stage. Hello, Edward.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. And you? How's it
Yeah,
going?
yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited to talk about Semantic Link Labs today.
Yeah, actually today from my city in the Canada, in Vancouver,
Yeah,
there is a sunny day. I
yeah, and
think that
I'm in Portland, so it's a nice day here too.
exactly that is an indicator to we have a great session to great
Yeah,
day.
yeah, cool. Well, I am going to share my screen, and hopefully
Sure.
we can get started.
Yeah, sure. Just
All right.
before you start, for all of the participants in this meeting, you can ask your question from Edward in the comment. I will share with Edward your question, and he will answer your question.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can
and
start your session. Let me add your presentation on the stage. Yeah, we have your presentation. You can start.
all right. And if anyone is watching and wants to ask questions live, feel free to kind of interrupt. I've got a few slides prepped today that we're going to kind of review. Oh, is it sharing the wrong screen there? Okay, we'll start from here. I have a few slides prepped today that we're going to review, and then hopefully we're going to spend the majority of time doing some demos, some live demos. So today we're going to be talking about Microsoft Fabric or Power BI Semantic Model Maintenance, in particular using Fabric notebooks and the open source plugin Semantic Link Labs. As I was just saying, we're going to do a really kind of quick introduction. We're then going to go over some background technical information, and then hopefully we're going to spend the majority of the time reviewing and doing some demos. More than anything today, what I hope you kind of take from this session is that you leave excited about Semantic Link Labs and you start to think about how to use Microsoft Fabric notebooks to do more or to automate your workload. Now, jumping in and a little bit more about me. So I am a Microsoft MVP with a focus on Power BI. So I am a data platform MVP, but my award category is in Power BI. I make YouTube videos under the handle Drop Materialized View, and I post pretty frequently on LinkedIn. In terms of my corporate background, I started at a investment firm here in the Portland metro area. I then moved on to Nike's finance business intelligence team at their world headquarters. And then I moved over to Adidas, where I led their essentially deployment of Microsoft Power BI for their North American sales team. And then now I currently work at Mars, yes, the candy company, but in their pet care division, for a really large veterinary provider here in the US called Banfield. Uh, I have basically spent my entire career in the gray area between kind of the IT and the business. And what that's meant is I've really, really come to love and appreciate tools like Microsoft Fabric and Microsoft Power BI that kind of enable you to do some really cool things pretty quickly. So before we get into that, I'm going to just kind of assume that uh, you might know nothing coming into this session. And so we're going to just kind of do some quick background information and reviews. So first of all, what is a Microsoft Fabric semantic model? They used to be called Power BI datasets, but when Microsoft Fabric rolled out, they were promoted to a first-class Microsoft Fabric item or artifact. They are essentially kind of ingest data from a wide variety of sources, and then they define your actual business logic, so on and so forth, into little cubes. Now, they are independent of a single report, which means that you can have multiple reports connected to them in Microsoft Power BI. And they're becoming increasingly important as we start to look at deploying out AI agents, various agentic processes, because the semantic model is where all of your business context lives, right? You might have data in a SQL server, but the semantic model is where like your business KPIs actually exist. And so if you're trying to enable an agentic workflow with data, semantic model is really important. What is a Microsoft Fabric notebook? Well, it is a browser-based code environment that you can run multiple languages in. So I have a tendency to run Python in them or PySpark, but you can write SQL. You can. I think some of them you can do Scala in. So they're a really, really, really versatile Microsoft Fabric item that you can schedule and run repetitively. They also are super useful for collaborating and kind of sharing between teams because multiple people can use and interact and edit them at the same time. And then you also can schedule them to run automatically. Okay. And then moving forward, what is Semantic Link Labs? Well, Semantic Link Labs is a Microsoft open source Python project, right? That is designed to run and operate within Microsoft Fabric notebooks. It allows you to interact with all kinds of things on Microsoft Fabric, and it's open to the community to contribute items, ideas, bugs, code to. However, I do want to shout out Michael here because if you actually look at the GitHub repo, he is the one that has written and contributed the vast majority of the code that's behind it. So we have kind of the three different objects then that we're talking about today, which is the Microsoft Fabric semantic models, the Microsoft Fabric notebooks where you can schedule and automate code, and then you have the Semantic Link Labs module, which is a Python library. I also, as part of kind of talking about Semantic Link Labs, want to point out that what we are only going to be talking about is functions today from the top level package and then 2 out of the current 48 sub packages. So if you're watching this today and you're getting super duper excited and saying, wow, it's amazing that Semantic Link Labs can do so much, just know that what you are looking at is a very, very, very small piece of the Semantic Link Labs world. And so there's probably a lot more out there for you to go and learn and get excited about. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Any questions from anyone on anything so far? No? Okay, all right. Well, let's then, without further ado, let's jump into some demos. So here I am in Microsoft Fabric here, and I'm currently in the Power BI mode right here. And as you can see, I have created a workspace over here called uh, demo. And to answer the question on if there are any prerequisites, yes, I am currently running uh, a Microsoft Fabric capacity. So I have a trial F64 Fabric capacity active right now. And then I also am running a Fabric F2 capacity at the moment. Um, so you do need Microsoft Fabric running. Microsoft is really generous with the free trials, though, and oftentimes they get renewed. So if you're wanting to follow along, that is what you'll need. And then I will also provide all of this code and GitHub, hopefully, kind of after the fact. I might have to align on how best to do that. I have obviously created a folder with a bunch of notebooks, and those are kind of the notebooks that I'm going to be using to give a demo. I've created a folder with a bunch of semantic models and then kind of their corresponding Power BI reports. So I've got 3 over here. And then I have created an environment. Now, I want to first talk about this environment that I've created. Now, you can create an environment in a Microsoft Fabric workspace by going over here and clicking this new item button, at which point you'll be able to see all of the various different items that you can create in Microsoft Fabric. And it's a lot, right? Like there's a lot going on here. And Microsoft has done a really good job of organizing them. You can create an environment and by clicking over here to filter and then just kind of searching for environment right here and then clicking this one right here. Now, what is an environment? Well, an environment allows you to kind of configure a custom runtime. So, right, you can install different libraries, you can install different Python libraries, you can install different R libraries, and then you also can link in external repositories. And you can do that by going over here and clicking the add library and then add library from either a public or a private repository. Now, Semantic Link Labs is a public Python package here. So you can click add library and then add from public library. And then you can click PY, PI, and you can enter in the library of Semantic Link Labs, at which point you can then select the version and then the publish mode. Now, once you do this, you will have to save and then publish the environment, and this can take some time. So I've already kind of pre-configured my environment right here. But the only thing that I've done is add in Semantic Link Labs and then hit the publish button. So you guys don't have to wait and watch while my Microsoft environment here kind of ramps itself up. Now, I have created a notebook here on kind of the various steps that we have to do. And at the very tail end of this notebook, what you can do is there's a piece of code here to check if Semantic Link Labs is installed. So the first thing that I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to connect to a default Fabric environment, which is why it's right here, workspace default. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect with a standard session. Now, this session is going to take some time to ramp up, but once it is ramped up, if I go ahead and I run this Python command right here, what you will notice is that Semantic Link Labs won't be installed. And that's because when I choose the workspace default, right, Semantic Link Labs isn't available. And that's what this command is essentially doing. However, if I go over here and I change my environment into the demo environment that I just configured and then hit confirm, and then hit confirm right here, If I go ahead and I create a new standard session, and there we are having a little bit of Microsoft Fabric uh, bugs right now. The service was a little degraded. So let me go ahead and let's refresh this. So if I go ahead and connect to my environment here, there we go, we're connecting. And then run this again. When I run that same command, it will recognize that Semantic Link Labs is available. So let's give this a second to connect, and then let's go ahead and run this command. Now, while this is turning on, I do want to talk about some other kind of prerequisites that we're going to need to do in order to work with some of these demos. And this won't be necessary for all the demos, but for some of the ones that we're talking about, we're going to be doing some read and writing using the XMLA endpoint. First, since this compute just turned on, let me just quickly run this so you can see. Look, I'm now in my environment, Semantic Link Labs. It should now be installed. And so we should now get a version returning once this cell finishes running. But jumping back, we do need to make sure that we have some other settings turned on for these demos. And those settings are going to be in the admin portal here. And man, this is taking a hot second to load. So there we go. It ran Semantic Link Labs is now installed now that I'm connected to my demo environment. The things, though, that we do need to make sure we have enabled on our admin portal. And yes, I do have some code on GitHub. Let me go ahead and drop that in the chat if you want to be following along really quick. One second while I grab the URL for that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I should just have dropped this in the chat in case you want to be following along. So you should be able to see all those notebooks. But going back into this, we do need to go into the admin portal, and we just need to make sure that we have, in order for all these demos to run, some settings enabled. So the most important one is going to be the XMLA endpoint. So you're going to have to make sure that you have allow XMLA endpoint enabled right here. And then you're going to have to go into the various capacities. So you'll see really quickly right here that I have both a trial capacity and then a fabric capacity that is an F2. And you're going to have to go into the settings with each one of these. So click right here and then go down into, I believe right here, Power BI workloads and enable XMLA read write. So here we are, XMLA is on, and then XMLA right here is read write. Additionally, we are going to be doing some really kind of fun AI demos, and those demos are going to be using OpenAI. So you do, if you want to be running the AI settings, you do have to make sure that you have enabled OpenAI on your tenant, right? So you can see this right over here under this Copilot and Azure OpenAI service. And I've just gone through and I've enabled pretty much all of these on these various settings. So with that, what have we covered so far? So we've covered our environmental setup, right? We've covered how to enable your XMLA endpoint within your various capacities. And then we have covered, hey, you know, if we want to do some of the AI stuff, you probably need to enable the OpenAI integration. One thing, if you do not want to configure a custom environment like what I did, you also can install Semantic Link Labs directly for that given kind of notebook session that you're running in the default workspace workload by just using a magic pip command here. And if you go ahead and you run this, you'll see it will start to install Semantic Link Labs for kind of the duration of the setting. Although in this case, right, it'll say requirements already satisfied for pretty much all these because we're in an environment where we've already loaded this. Before I move on past any of kind of these initial setups and into some actual demos, any questions so far? No? Okay, I've been answering them along the way, so hopefully there's not. Okay, we are going to break our demos into 4 kind of additional or 4 sections. The first section is going to just be focused on some basics when it comes to using Semantic Link Labs to interact with semantic models. The third is going to be looking at some kind of deployment scenarios. So that would be things you'd want to be doing as you're moving semantic models around, making sure that they're up and they're running correctly. The fourth will be some maintenance tasks, and then 5 towards the end, we're going to be actually doing some kind of AI-powered fun demos. And to answer on Semantic Link Labs on PySpark notebooks, Semantic Link Labs is designed specifically to run in Microsoft Fabric notebooks. So I think that should kind of help to give you some clarity. Like it uses a lot of the built-in tools and services and clients that you get in Microsoft Fabric. So I would really consider it kind of an extension of Microsoft Fabric. All right. Jumping back over here into kind of our basics demo and kind of ramping up some of this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to define some parameters here. So that's going to be the workspace that we're going to be working in, and then the data set that we're going to be using for the majority of this demo, which is this card UDF data set. Now, if we go back over here into Power BI and into this demo workspace, which is also where these notebooks are, you can see here is the workspace name. And then if I go over here into semantic models, here is that data set that we're working with. Now, up at the very top of this URL right here, you'll notice that there is a number right here. And this is the workspace ID, like kind of a long UDID. And then you'll notice a long UDID right here, and that is the dataset ID. Now, these can be really important when you are trying to reference a specific semantic model using Semantic Link Labs, because they're kind of like the IDs here. Oh, look, Michael's in the chat. Wow. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Yeah, so here we are kind of with our workspace configured. And then we have some imports right here. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be importing Semantic Link, and then I'm going to be importing in Semantic Link Labs right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this, although I did not connect to environment. So let's continue and let's connect to my demo environment. And there we go. If we run this one more time right here, and then let's go ahead and let's hit connect. And we are running into some Spark settings here on the service. Come on. I was running into this a little bit yesterday. There. Oh. Okay, well, let's switch to hopefully kind of a standard default environment, and hopefully we won't run into any additional settings. Oh, come on. Here we are. 1 second right here, and this is always the fun settings of a live demo. And I am just going to quickly log in and log out. And let's hopefully get this back up and running. So here we are, log back in. And let's go ahead and let's hit connect. And then let's hit connect to a new standard session. And one more second right here, semantic notebooks. And then let's go back in here and let's go ahead and let's hit connect and then new standard session. And there we are, it's connecting now. And hopefully we're gonna ramp up this. Oh, nope. Come on. All right. The unfortunate timing of this was Microsoft Fabric in the West US and East US was a little degraded yesterday. So we might have to kind of review this code and kind of come back to it. But the first thing that I wanted to kind of show you right here was we have how to resolve a workspace name right here where we have labs and then helper functions kind of coming through right here. And then we have our data set ID right here. So if you don't want to go into the web URL right here, you can go ahead and you can actually print out and fetch the workspace ID and then the data set ID programmatically. And let's just see if we can't get this to connect one more time right here, going through. And we are running into some problems with PySpark. But if we go all the way down, we can start to see kind of some of our additional demos here. So we have the listing of semantic models. And give me 1 second. We can't. Oh no. Right here. And let's just see if we exit fully out of some of these and then go back in, if we can get them running one more time. So let's go right here and let's hit connect, new standard session. And it looks like we might be starting up correctly here. So we should be able to kind of go through some of these in just a second. So here we are, here we had kind of just the initial get a workspace ID and get a data set ID. Then we had right here, this kind of initial command, which this is just using regular semantic link, which is listing all semantic models in a given workspace. And then we start to get into kind of our first Semantic Link Labs function, which is listing all of the individual reports that are actually using a semantic model right here. And let's just see if we are not connecting. Hopefully in just a second, we should see our compute here starting to kind of turn on. And we are still struggling with Microsoft Fabric here. So give me 1 second. Okay, well, let's see if we can't hopefully switch the capacity of our workspace and bring some of these back on. So I'm going to go over here and you're going to get to see if I can get our workspace capacity up and running right here. So I'm going to go into general and then I'm going to go into workspace type and I'm going to try to switch off of my FU2 over here onto a trial capacity. I'm going to go ahead and switch select to turn back onto the trial capacity. And then I'm going to try to go back over here and connect in real time using a standard session. And nope, we are still having some problems with Microsoft Fabric. So you might have to just watch me list some code off, which will not be very fun, but we have our various functions here, which can list tables. There we are. Okay, let's give this a second. Okay, we're now live. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have our function right here, which can list tables. And we're getting a labs is not installed because we are in a default environment. So we are going to have to use the pip command really quick to install Semantic Link Labs. So we can do that by going back over here, back into notebooks, back into setup, and then actually grabbing the individual pip command, because I am not going to let that Spark cluster shut back down. So we are going to install Semantic Link Labs right here. And then we are going to start to set some variables and run through. And thank you for your patience as we run through some of these demos. So here we are downloading and installing. All right, and I think we should be good now. And we can now set some parameters. So that would be our workspace name and our data set name right here. And this should run fine through here. And then we can actually import in Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs successfully. And then we can start to go through this. So here, for example, here we are fetching our workspace and our data set ID programmatically right here. So here, for example, is our workspace ID and our data set ID. Then we can go through and we can list all of the items actually connected to a semantic model. Now, remember that the semantic model that we are working with, if we go down here and we go into semantic models, is this card UDF. So if I run this, it should just return the card UDF report right here, which, as you'll see in just a second, it should do. And then and actually this is listing all data sets. I got a little confused in the demo. So there we are. So there's all of our 3 of our data sets. Then we get into listing all reports, which when we run this, you should see it actually start to connect. And there's that report that's coming out. And then if you want to actually list all data sets that a semantic model is doing, you can actually click right here, run this, and here is all of the connections that a given semantic model is using. So far, other than struggling with our Spark session, we've kind of covered how Semantic Link and Semantic Link Labs can pull out some basic metadata out of a report and tell you a little bit about the semantic model. Now we're going to start to dig in a little bit more into how you can fetch some of the data out of a semantic model using Semantic Link Labs. So again, we're connected to that data set. So if I run this labs function right here, what this is going to do is this is going to return all of the tables that are in a given semantic model into a pandas data frame, which this did very quickly. And then I can click right here and go through dependencies right here. So for example, here is all of the various object dependencies in a semantic model. Now, I was going to switch over into the deployment notebook right here, but I don't want to give up this Spark session that is currently running. So what we're going to do is we are going to copy and paste some cells from our other notebook in, and we are going to start to kind of run through some of this. So again, I've got some parameters over here. So I've got my workspace name again, which is demo. I have a source workspace name. I have a target workspace name, a data set name, a source data set name, and then a target data set and a new data set name. So if I run all of these, I've now set some additional parameters, and we can now start to get into some more fun demos. To answer your question, Karan, around can you give essentially all semantic models in the workspace, because we're currently working with one? Yes, you can. You can use Python to loop through. And I think maybe you didn't see because we were struggling over here. But one of the first things that I did is I actually used Semantic Link to list all of the semantic models in a given workspace. So what you could theoretically do is you could write a method or something that would loop through every single semantic model doing one of these actions, right? So if you wanted to get all tables across all semantic models in a workspace, you could say, kind of create that loop. if you actually wanted to go across the entire tenant or across all workspaces you have access to, you could even loop through workspaces, then loop through data sets, then fetch tables, for example. But going back into some of these more exciting demos, kind of in my deployment section, now that we've covered the basics, we can start to do some stuff that's a bit more fun and actually a bit more interactive. So once again, I'm going to run some imports here, and there's a few additional imports that I'm doing because we're going to be using some best practice analyzer stuff, and then we are also going to be using pandas. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about how you can actually move semantic models. How you can create a semantic model from scratch. So if I run just this statement right here in demo, what you will notice is that it will run for just a second. But then when I go back into my demo workspace, I will now have a nice new semantic model called my new semantic model. So let's go back over here. Let's go into demo. And then here we go. Here we have a nice new empty semantic model. So you can actually create a semantic model from scratch and then start to add things, which is really, really fun. And we'll get into how you can do some of that in just a second. The next thing that you can do, which is also always a little dangerous, is you can actually delete a semantic model through deployment. So if you wanted to copy a semantic model from one place to another and then delete it from like a dev workspace, for example, you can go ahead and you can actually delete this semantic model out. So here I am kind of deleting the new semantic model that I created. So now if I go back into my demo workspace, I should have now deleted my new semantic model. So there it is. It's no longer there. The next thing that we can then do is we can then copy a semantic model from point A to point B or into another workspace. So like kind of to what we were talking about, where if you create a semantic model, delete a semantic model, you can now actually move a semantic model. So if we're thinking about a deployment workflow, right? In theory, when you're ready to promote, you could promote from a dev workspace into a prod workspace and then delete, right? Or you could create and then promote from dev to prod. And this actually works pretty well when you're trying to move things across deployment pipelines. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to run this. And what you're going to see is that my card UDF semantic model right here is going to be copied and then pasted into my other demo workspace called demo 2. And here you can actually see it. Now there's some additional kind of fun parameters that we get with some of these functions. So we could have refreshed it after the copy, and then we also could have overwritten it. So if a semantic model already existed, you can kind of do that overwriting. Now, on most of these functions that I am showing you, there are some additional parameters, and that's why I've gone ahead and I've linked to the Semantic Link Labs documentation in these notebooks. So you should be able to click it and open it and look at all of these additional parameters. Don't believe just because I haven't put it in this demo that the option isn't there. Again, I want to emphasize that Semantic Link Labs is incredible in what it can automate, and what we're doing today is just kind of scratching the surface. Moving through though, and kind of on to some additional really fun deployment examples, you can go through and you can endorse a semantic model. And Grant, to answer your question, with a pipeline, you can manage the data source from dev to QA to prod with the deployment pipeline. There actually is a Semantic Link Labs package for running deployment pipelines. This would be what if you have like kind of a scratch workspace for a team member, right? And it's not part of the official pipeline, and it's not connected to Git, you could actually just, hey, I'm going to just copy that semantic model over really, really quickly. When it comes to deploying out semantic models, there are a lot of different options and a lot of different ways to do things. This is an example of how you could use Semantic Link Labs to manage that. The next thing, though, that I do want to cover is endorsing a semantic model, which is actually making something kind of have one of those little badges. And if you've ever worked in Power BI, you might see it, right, where it's like promoted, certified, master data. And this is a function that can go ahead and it can enable that badge, no problem. So to your point, Karan, around the data pipeline and kind of moving data, this would be one way that you could say, hey, after I've pushed from dev to prod, this new workspace, I want to add a badge really quickly as certified. And so if we go back over here into our workspace and back over here into our demo workspace and then into our semantic models, as you can see, I now have a nice little promoted badge. And then I also can then make it discoverable. So the semantic model appears on the homepage of Microsoft Power BI whenever anyone logs in and sees it, right? So that would be if someone is just using Power BI to build reports, for example, or just analyze in Excel in a semantic model, right? They can go ahead and they can run right here. And this would actually kind of promote a semantic model up into the homepage. So we've now covered just kind of some basics on like how you can fetch workspace IDs and how you can list semantic models and how you can list reports and workspaces. And we've covered some kind of top level Semantic Link Labs functions. Let's talk about a more fun scenario when it comes to deployment, and that is Best Practice Analyzer. Now, Best Practice Analyzer, you can run with a high-level method with a standard set of rules. However, at least for me, in my experience, some of these rules, I get so many warnings, and you'll see it pop up in just a second, that it's a little overwhelming, right? So this card UDF that we're running in here has so many violations that it's a little overwhelming to actually address or understand. And some of these violations might not be that important to me in my organization. So with Semantic Link Labs, though, what you can go ahead and do is you can define custom rules and then run Best Practice Analyzer with your own custom rules. So one of the things that I'm doing here is I am defining a rule here around formatting, and then I am defining a rule here around the actual organization right here. So that's every single measure has to have a display folder. And if we go ahead and we run this, what you'll see is it will actually access the semantic model, and then it will run my custom rules here. And so as you can see right here, I've created a formatting rule where it's, hey, every measure must have a formatting string, and it's flagging 2 measures that don't have a formatting string. And then I've said, hey, every measure has to have a display folder. And as you can see, none of my measures right here actually have a display folder. And then to answer the question around speed, in the region where I am, we are the Microsoft Fabric service is a little degraded, which is why I was having some trouble kind of getting a Spark session up and running in the beginning there. But what's really fun about kind of these additional rules right here is you can completely customize them and you can organize them any way you want. And then you can go ahead and you can run them over and over again. So for example, right here, if I wanted to name this section instead organization, and I wanted to go, hey, Ned's custom rules, right? And then I run this again, what you'll see is that when this runs, that section has now been renamed to Ned's custom rules. So in terms of kind of deployment and doing automated checks and a peer review, if you're in kind of a large organization, you can actually go ahead and you can define your own custom standards and peer review settings that you can then just run on every single semantic model and immediately get a report. The standard best practice analyzer rules are really great, but sometimes you want to actually change and kind of customize things on your own. Now, if you get this long list of rules and problems, there's a good chance that you probably want to fix some of them. And that kind of then brings us into the next stage that we're going to be talking about, which is going to be our maintenance, or how we're going to maintain semantic models using Semantic Link Labs. And once again, I am not going to give up the Spark session that we have running. So I am going to move these various cells into this workbook right here. And as you can see, we're still pretty much working with the same semantic model, but hopefully we're going to clean it up. We also have 2 RLS users that we're going to be doing some fun things with. One is me, Edward, and then the other is my dog, Jai, who's been assigned to a security role. So I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to bring over some imports right here. And I'm going to go ahead and run these. Now, what we can do, and the first thing that we need to kind of talk about is refreshing, because you can do some pretty cool things with refreshing. The first thing that you can do, which I'm not going to click in just because I can see we're getting a little tight on time, is you can do a full refresh of a semantic model programmatically. The next thing, though, that you can do is you can refresh specific tables, right? And you might be like, well, why would I want to refresh a specific table using Semantic Link Labs? Well, a good example would be an RLS table, right? You might have a singular table that contains all of your users in your RLS, and you might have added a user to that specific table. You then might want to just refresh just that one instead of doing an entire semantic model recalc and refresh. And then you might want to do that across multiple semantic models. So every single semantic model that has that RLS table enabled. So as you can see here, I've got a list of semantic models right here. And then in this particular example, I am either enabling or disabling refresh. But you also could, for example, do that right here with this refresh right here. I'm going to pause here. Any questions on a specific refresh scenario with Semantic Link Labs? No? Okay. All right. So again, one of the reasons why you might want to enable or disable en masse is maybe your data warehouse that you're trying to ingest data from is down, right? This would be one particular way that you could kind of shut everything down. And then also simultaneously, just kind of a different refresh section right here, you could update a refresh schedule. But I'm not going to run any of those because I am wanting to cover the TOM package out of Semantic Link Labs. And this is how you can actually interact with a semantic model on your workspace, creating or fixing or updating items. So the first thing that you need to do in order to connect is you actually need to open or create a TOM wrapper. And all this is going to do is it's going to open that wrapper, it's going to print the name of the semantic model, and then it's going to close it. And so that's exactly what it did. And this is a really simple example. And yes, you definitely can refresh specific partitions. But going down here, as you can see, I just opened a connection to the semantic model right here. And then I closed it. But when you open that connection, you can start to do all kinds of fun things. For example, you can refresh, you can print all measures, right? Which you could do already. So here I am kind of getting the table, but you can also then start to edit some of those measures. So for example, I could run this piece of code right here that's going to go ahead and it's going to format all of that DAX. And as you can notice right here, there is a read only true or false flag because I'm going to actually be formatting DAX. Right here, I have read only set to false. So if I go ahead and I run this, as you can see, it will then start to kind of loop through, and then it will actually go ahead and format all of my measures that I had in this semantic model. So if I now go in, I would now see all of these various measures. So for example, total sales formatted beautifully with a semantic model. Just for time, I am not going to show that. And then I am just going to quickly reset the state right here because I do want to get into some more interesting examples. One of those being, hey, adding a measure right here. So here I am using the Tom wrapper to add a measure. And as you can see, I can actually set a fact table, a measure name, an expression, a formatting expression, and a description and a folder revenue. So if I go ahead and I run this right here, what you will then see is that if I then go back into this semantic model and I give it a refresh, what we will now see is we now have total sales new, right? So we just added a measure in here that didn't exist before using Semantic Link Labs. Now, we can update a measure by adding it using an update statement, but let's do something that's a little bit more advanced. So I'm going to add an entire calculation group right here using Semantic Link Labs by going over here, clicking add calculation group, and then adding the various items right here. So here I am clicking this. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to run this. And what you'll see is that now when I go back to this semantic model right here and I give it a refresh, I actually now have an entire calculation group being added, right? And so you can start to kind of add and create and actually build an entire semantic model or update an entire semantic model without even having to kind of touch or edit the semantic model on its own. Now, I have some additional examples here on like how you can update calculation groups, but I do want to get to a more fun example. And this is a really kind of common example, and this is figuring out, hey, what SQL tables are actually used in various pieces. So to answer your question around partitions from earlier, here I am opening a connection using Semantic Link Labs. I'm fetching all tables, then I'm fetching all partitions. And then I'm going ahead and I am getting the M code, and then I'm going through and I'm parsing it, right? For any kind of table right here. And I'm using some regex to pattern match where tables are. So if I go ahead and run this, what you'll see is it actually goes into my semantic model, goes into the permissions, pulls the Power BI table name, and then it goes ahead and it shows me the various Databricks tables that this semantic model is connected to, which is really, really exciting because you can start to imagine this maintenance scenario of the data engineering or your data warehouse team telling you, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make this change. And you not being able to struggle, you being able to like run through all of your semantic models and go, oh, hey, this is the exact semantic model that's using this table. And yes, there are other ways to find that out, but this is a really, really quick programmatic way of doing this. Now, we do just have 5 minutes left, and I do have some AI-powered examples that are using the OpenAI service. In order to use this service, though, I do have to be on a paid Microsoft Fabric capacity. So I am going to do the risky demo here of abandoning our compute, going into our workspace and switching back onto my paid capacity. So I'm going to go back over here to workspace type, going back over here, and then switching from Fabric and onto my paid capacity and hitting select. So hopefully now I should be able to actually connect right here using my session. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a refresh, and then hopefully we can review some of these AI examples. So I'm going to connect right here. And it looks like we are back in this exact same connection setting here, although it looks like it might be starting. But I can kind of talk to you at a high level about the way some of these are working. So I'm using the Tom package to pull various things, like for example, measures, right? And then I am putting those measures in with a prompt, and I am prompting OpenAI here to return stuff to me as a JSON object. And then I'm using the Tom package to take that JSON and distribute it around. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to install the OpenAI services, because it looks like this compute did turn on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and set some parameters. But while this is running, any additional questions on anything we are doing here? No? Okay. All right. So this is going to install, and let's talk about some of the AI examples we have going on through here. So there we are. So let's run this. So the first one that we're doing is going to be the exact same thing I was just showing you with regex, only this time we're going to use AI, which is we're going to use AI to parse out SQL tables. The advantage of using AI though here instead of regex is that you don't necessarily have to even look for SQL tables, right? So if maybe you wanted to find, hey, where's all the places that like the SharePoint list is being used? Or hey, where's all the places that, you know, the file name Bob is kind of going through right here. And yes, to Michael's point, you can reassign the workspace capacity using Semantic Link Labs as well. Again, but if I go through, what you'll see that this is going to start to execute some AI steps right here. And it's going to generate a response, which is going to be in JSON. And then you're going to actually see some of that come through. Now, you can use Semantic Link Labs built-in functions to generate AI-powered measure descriptions. However, those are very set within the Microsoft confines of generating descriptions. And so if you're trying to use a prep for AI, you might want to provide some custom prompts. So here is an exact same prompt that when you run, right, will go through and it will generate descriptions. Only in this case, I could give this something as silly as return the description starting with my lord, or something like, hey, it has to be under 200 characters so you can use it with the data agent. And you can actually provide kind of a custom prompt. But as you see, when I run through this, right, if I then go back into this same semantic model right here, I now have a bunch of different semantic model items and descriptions kind of coming through. Finally, though, the other thing that you can also then start to do is you can also then start to kind of organize some of your measures using AI, right? So here I am actually having the AI generate and suggest semantic model folders. And then I'm using Semantic Link Labs to move those measures into the folders that the AI suggested right here. Now, one of the more complex uses that I don't have a demo for, but that you could start to do in practice with this kind of AI generated response is you could, and here you go, as you can see it actually moved and created all these sales, is you could do something of look across all of my various semantic models, look for measures that have similar names or similar definitions, and then rename those onto a common definition. So that starts to become a really, really fun and exciting governance task. With that, I do see that we are at the end of this session, and I apologize for kind of running out of time here due to some capacity problems. But with that, I'm happy to stay over if there's any questions, or if not, I shared the GitHub repo so you can kind of go through and review some of the examples. I can see Michael's in the chat, which again, he is the mastermind behind a lot of this. Yeah, anything else?
Great. Thank you, Edward. It was a great session, and I enjoyed that your presentation and also demo. And we have a great interaction with all of the folk in the chat. Guys, if you have any question, you can put in the chat, or for future, everybody see that video record on our YouTube channel. If you have any question, you can connect with Edward on the social media, on the LinkedIn. You can ask your question too. It seems, yeah, that's.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Okay, since there is no more question in the chat, we can close this session.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Have a great